Hey there, and welcome into another episode of the Route 1 Rundown, your place for Maryland basketball coverage. The Terps come off a 78-74 loss to the Marquette Golden Eagles last night. It was a tough one in College Park, and I'm here to break it all down. A reminder, I also want to hear from you. Tell me what you thought about that game. Give me your feedback, give me your reaction. If there's something that you want to hear discussed on the air, hit me up. The best places on Twitter or X, whatever in the world you want to call it. My handle there, @GorgOnSports. But let's dive right in to this loss for the Terps in their first big game of the year. And I don't know that I'm going to follow this format for every game reaction, but today I think it fits. And I want to go through a little bit of good, bad, and ugly in this one. And let's start with the good, because I do think there was a lot of good that you could take out of this one, despite it being a loss and a disappointing loss at that. The first good thing to me was the crowd. The students showed up for this one, and every time I walk into that building and there's a real buzz in there, it reminds me of how special Maryland basketball can be. Why I fell in love with Maryland basketball going to games at a young age. It really is a different environment, I think, than anything else in this region, in this area, when it's going, when people are engaged, when you have buzz around the program. And last night was a great example of that. An 8 p.m. Friday night game. The student section was packed. I can't tell you the last time I walked into that stadium, and I was there in the building last night, and I actually saw a line for students to get in, and that's what I saw last night. And I walked in the building, and it was completely packed in the student section. It was a full wall when the starting lineups were being announced, and it was awesome, and I love that. And that is the kind of atmosphere and environment that I grew up with at Maryland, that I saw when I was a student there, and I love seeing that again for such a big game. So to me, that was a really big positive. I did want to hit on that to start, because I was there in the building. It's a big part of college basketball, is that environment, is that college. That's why so many people fall in love with it. That's why I fell in love with it. Look, I'm never going to sit here and argue with you that the quality of play is better in college basketball than the NBA, because it's absolutely not. That would be ludicrous to say. But there are some special things about college basketball, and the crowd and the environment and the feeling are one of those things, or a few of those things, and I felt that feeling last night. I felt what Maryland basketball can be around big games again last night. So big shouts to the student section there. It was a great crowd, and I thought it had a really positive impact on the game. Now, on to the game itself, what we saw on the court. There's some obvious positives to take out of this one. It's the emergence of Jacoby Gillespie and Derek Queen in each of their first really big game as Terps, putting up 24 points apiece. Those are two guys that are offensive weapons. Derek Queen, in his fourth game as a Terp, I mean, a guy who was playing high school basketball, albeit at a very high level this time last year, has shown that he has a real place at the upper echelon of college basketball as a freshman. 24 points against a Marquette team that is very good, against a Marquette team that, maybe doesn't have the size and the physicality that a lot of Big Ten front courts do, but they're still a very good team, a good defensive team, a team that plays good defense together, that can make life hard for a big man who isn't comfortable handling the ball a lot, with trapping, with putting pressure on him. And I thought Queen handled that as well as he possibly could have. In fact, I was unbelievably impressed with the way he handled that. Again, the tune of 24 points, a super efficient 9 of 13 from the floor for Queen, 6 of 8 from the free throw line. A really big night for Derek Queen, and every time I see him, the more impressed I am with him. A lot of what he did last night wasn't just back to the basket, get the ball in good position, and make a move in the post. You saw his ball handling ability. You saw when he was matched up against a guy who's not quite as quick as him, his ability to take a guy to the basket. You saw his ability when he's matched up against somebody who's not as physical as him to put him in the blender in the post. Now, I thought both Queen and Reese struggled a little bit at times to get great position in the post, but that would be nitpicking Derek Queen's game at this point. He was an absolute offensive weapon last night to the tune of 24 points. And then Jacoby Gillespie, I talked a little bit about it in the preview to this, he has quietly been Maryland's best guard through 3 games, Well, there was nothing quiet about what he did last night. Again, 24 points for Gillespie, 4 of 9 from beyond the arc, and he is very clearly Maryland's best playmaker, Maryland's best creator, and Maryland's best guard, and I think he's doing an excellent job of filling in that hole that Jameer Young left when he departed. So that's the positives for me. You saw two guys that I think very clearly have the potential to be first or second team all Big Ten. I know that gets a little overplayed because there's only 5 players that are first team all Big Ten, and everybody says this guy has first team potential. I think those two guys very clearly could be among the top 10 players in the Big Ten this season, and that's a huge win. In my opinion, you add that to a guy in Julian Reese, who we'll get to in just a moment here, but has proven that he's one of the top 15 players or so in the Big Ten over the past couple of years. And I think you can see that this is a good nucleus, a good core, a team that's going to be able to compete with anybody they go up against in the Big Ten. So I thought that was very impressive. And I thought offensively, it was a good game for the Terps. They go for a 1.09 points per possession. Very good. They shot just under 37% from beyond the three-point arc. Again, very good. They shot 61% from 2. A pretty efficient number there. 61% from 2. And I thought they got to the rim a lot. That's something I always look for when I watch a game is how often are they getting to the rim and how often are they being forced to settle for mid-range jumpers. Well, according to Bart Torvik, Maryland had 28 shots at the rim, just 8 mid-range jumpers, and then they took another 19 threes. You know, that's the way it is in modern basketball. You want to get to the rim, you want to take threes, you don't want to have too many of those mid-range jumpers. 28 shots at the rim for the Terps and just 8 mid-range jumpers. So I really like that about Maryland's offense. I didn't think Maryland's offense was the problem at all last night. I didn't think Maryland's offense was the reason that they lost, and that is encouraging in a way because that's something that has been a little less sure thing over the first couple of years of the Kevin Willard era. It's been defense, where the offense is sometimes what lets them down. The offense is what can lead to a loss. I didn't feel that way last night, but there were some bad things. They lost the game. It's a game that was a benchmark game. I talked about earlier in the week why I thought it was so important, both from a energizing the fan base perspective and building confidence for this team. And they came up short in it. So certainly there were some bad things. The number one thing that stands out to me here was the defense in the second half for the Terps. Marquette in this game, in the second half, ends up scoring 48 points in College Park. You can't do that. You can't allow nearly 50 points in the second half at home, and that was led in large part by their best player, their lead guard, Cam Jones, who was sensational in the second half. He goes for 18 in the second half alone. He goes for, I think it was 28 for the game there for Jones, but the second half, 18 of his 28. Again, he's a super efficient player, and he did just that in the second half. His backcourt mate, Stevie Mitchell, also goes for 14 in the second half. But to me, it was really the Cam Jones show in the second half there, and part of that is him just being an all-Big East caliber player, one of the best guards in the country, a guy who is really, really good and is just going to beat you at times. But part of it was I didn't think Maryland did a good enough job defending him, and I want to go back and do a rewatch this week. Like I said, I was at the game, and being at the game gives you a great perspective on some things. It doesn't always give you a great perspective on other things. I want to go back and do a rewatch, watch the TV copy this week, and see how they defended him. I know Willard mentioned in his presser, and they kind of changed the pick and roll coverage. They went to a trap at one point, and then they didn't trap, and of course, that's not going to really work when you go to a trap and you don't trap. But Maryland, I saw them switching a lot on that pick and roll, and Cam Jones was getting matched up on bigger guys at times. Now, Maryland also played a 4-guard lineup for a lot of that second half with Julian Reese on the bench, and I think part of that was to make that unit more switchable. So if they went to the pick and roll, allow somebody who's a little more athletic, a little quicker to deal with Cam Jones, to guard Cam Jones. But one of the interesting things I saw, and again, I want to go watch this TV copy and see what I can pick up there, was I didn't see a lot of Deshaun Harris-Smith on Cam Jones. And that was curious to me because I think Deshaun Harris-Smith is regarded as the Terps' best defender, and I get that Marquette has a lot of scoring threats. I get that they have a lot of options, but Cam Jones is one of the best offensive players certainly in the Big East, but probably the country as well. And to not at least try Deshaun Harris-Smith on him for a little bit more of the game was something that I want to go back and take a little bit of a look at. I didn't hear Kevin Willard specifically asked about that during his post-game presser. He was asked about something about guarding. He went on an answer about guarding Cam Jones and how they did switch the coverage at some point, but Cam Jones was the difference in this game. Cam Jones and Stevie Mitchell, they looked like guys who were seniors, had been at that school, Marquette, for 4 years and have played together for 4 years. And I thought that was the difference for Marquette in the second half. So I thought the bad in this game was the defense in the second half, particularly allowing Cam Jones to score 18 points. I think Maryland still has the potential to be a good defensive team. That hasn't changed to me. But I'm certainly a little more weary now about their ability to guard really elite guards. Now, fortunately for the Terps, they're not going to see a ton of elite guards in the Big Ten. If they were playing in the Big East, that would be more of a concern to me. If they were playing in the SEC, there's a lot of really good guards in the SEC. That would be more of a concern for me. But I don't think they're going to see a ton of guards like Cam Jones in Big Ten play. But still, they had a chance to win this game last night. They didn't, and I think in large part it was because they allowed Marquette to score 48 points in the second half. In the first half as well, this goes in the bad category for me, were the turnovers. I thought turnovers were going to be the key to this game, and I was really shocked that Maryland in the first half of this game turned the ball over, I believe it was 9 times in the first half. Yeah, Maryland had 9 first-half turnovers in this game and still had a lead at the break. That was absolutely shocking to me that Maryland was able to survive turning the ball over 9 times. But Maryland played much better defense on Marquette in the first half, and I think that's why they survived that. Now, you flip things in the second half, Maryland doesn't turn the ball over nearly as much, just 4 times in the second half, but they let up 48. So it was a little counterintuitive there because I thought one of the keys was going to be not turning the ball over so Marquette couldn't get easy buckets. I thought Marquette could be bogged down a little bit in a half-court game. That proved not to be the case in the second half at all, as Cam Jones absolutely went off in that second half. So those things kind of go hand in hand for me as that poor second-half defense, and then it was set up well, too, to play better defense in the second half because they weren't turning the ball over. They weren't just handing Marquette fast break points. They were making them play in the half court, and Marquette was beating them in the half court. So that was a disappointing thing for me as well. Something that I think is certainly fixable, something that I think can get better. Cam Jones, Stevie Mitchell are not guys you were going to face every night, but it was a huge part of the reason why I think they lost that game last night. And let's finish it up here with the ugly. Now, we haven't touched on the fact that Maryland made a furious comeback down the stretch in this game that was really impressive because with 1:08 left, I think it seemed like about, half the crowd started streaming out of the arena, and I gave props to the crowd, particularly the students, to start it. I said that was part of the good. Well, that was part of the bad. A minute left in this game. Maryland down 8. They had played a really good game. They had played hard. I get people want to beat traffic. I know. It's a pain to get there. Believe me, it's a pain to get there at times. It's a pain to get out of there at times. But with 1:08 left, Maryland was down 8. It did seem like the game was over. But, guys, this is a program that once blew a 10-point lead in 54 seconds. You know what can happen in college basketball. And Maryland makes a furious comeback in this game. In fact, Maryland had 2 possessions down to on the first one. Jacoby Gillespie gets to the basket, gets blocked, misses a layup. It looked like it could have been called a foul, and I know there's going to be a lot of griping about the end of game officiating in this game, and I thought there were some bad calls, but it's just not something that interests me a ton to talk about post-game is the officiating. I think there are so many more interesting things to talk about in this basketball game than the officiating in it. But either way, Jacoby Gillespie could have gone to the line, didn't. but they get another break. Maryland gets a break because they get some missed free throws on the other end, and they come down, and Deshaun Harris-Smith gets into the lane. He gets ahead of steam. He is the guy who made a shot to cut the lead to 2. He is the guy who I think he made one of the threes. Yeah, he made one of the threes, that first 3, in fact, when they were down 74-66 to cut it to 5. So without Deshaun Harris-Smith making a 3 and getting into the lane, they never get the game down to 2. But Deshaun Harris-Smith gets into the lane again, down 2. He's headed to the basket. He gets fouled. He steps to the line, and he misses both free throws. And it was a killer there. And so, to me, the ugly goes to the free throw shooting. But it's not all on Deshaun Harris-Smith in that situation, because he missed the most critical free throws of the game, the most visible free throws of the game. But earlier in the game, Derek Queen missed a free throw. He made 1 of 2 with just over 2 minutes to go at a critical juncture of the game. With about 2.5 minutes to go, Selton Miguel stepped the line. He missed the front end of a 1-and-1. It's just the little things in a basketball game that can be the difference between winning and losing. So for the game, you look at the box score, you're like, okay, they didn't shoot the ball terribly from the free throw line. 9 of 14. It's not awful. It's not great. 64%. You certainly want it to be better. But it was the timing of those missed free throws. Again, 2:32 left. Selton Miguel steps to the line. Down by 5, misses the front end of a 1-and-1. So he essentially goes 0 for 2 in that situation, even though it only is going to show in the box score as an 0 for 1. Then Derek Queen steps to the line, still down 5. He misses the first, and I think he made the second there. I can't remember the order. I think it was he missed the first, made the second. Either way, he missed a free throw there. And then I'm just trying to find it here because it doesn't look like in this box score. Okay, yeah, he missed the first, made the second with 2:09 to go. But that's 3 points left on the table right there in the last 2.5 minutes of the game. And then you add Harris-Smith's, that's 5 points left on the table from free throws. It's not great. It's not what you want. It's the little things like that can cost you a game when you're playing a really good team like Marquette. Now, again, much like I don't like to dwell on the officiating, I don't want to dwell on those guys really missing those free throws because it's part of the game. It happens. It happens every day. Guys miss free throws. Nobody's a perfect free throw shooter. Look, Cam Jones, I said Maryland got a break on the other end after Gillespie missed the layup, got blocked, maybe got fouled, whatever you want to call it. Cam Jones goes to the line, and he misses 2 free throws. Cam Jones, the guy who put up 18 in the second half on this team, missed 2 free throws. So it happens. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it's certainly something that needs to get better. And those are the kind of little things when you're playing really high-level basketball games against really good teams that you can't do. That and things like 9 turnovers in the first half are really going to kill you. So that goes in the ugly to me. And then the last thing when I think about the ugly, and this is more ugly to me going forward, it's something I have a real concern about here going forward, is Maryland looked completely different offensively without Jacoby Gillespie on the court. And look, we saw Jameer Young last year have to play 38, 39, 40 minutes sometimes. Maryland needs to have more of an option when Gillespie's out of the game. He played 36 minutes last night. In the second half, he played 19 of the 20 minutes. But when he was out, that offense looked completely different. Something I'm trying to find information on, I want to get an answer on, is Jahari Long, who has been part of the Maryland program for the past couple of years. He suffered an injury, a knee injury, at the end of last season, and I really haven't seen anything regarding when he might come back. He would be a really nice piece to have as a backup point guard, but I really haven't seen anything. I haven't heard Willard ask about it. Willard hasn't said anything, so I don't know at what point he might be back, and it's a tough break for the Terps. And, when you think about the offseason and what they went out and did, that might be one area where you can say, hey, could they have gotten somebody else in addition to Gillespie, that could really fill that point guard role. Jay Young last night, I think he played about 5 minutes or so, 4 minutes in that game. But Maryland just looked like a very different team when Jacoby Gillespie was not running the point. And that's something that they're going to have to figure out as the season goes on. So that would go in the other ugly category for me. The final thought for me on this game, and it doesn't fit into any of these categories, my kind of biggest takeaway going forward is I'm now curious what the minute split and the lineup split between Derek Queen and Julian Reese is. Because Julian Reese in that game with Derek Queen really going strong, Julian Reese only played 11 second half minutes. He only put up 3 shots in the second half of this game. For the game, I don't think he scored at all in the first half. So Reese scored 2 points total in this game. Julian Reese is a guy who's proven in the Big Ten. Julian Reese is a guy who is clearly one of your best 5 players, and it's now the thing that I'm watching the closest, and it's one of the things I mentioned before the season that I was going to watch. How do these two guys play together, and how can Kevin Willard get creative with running an offense where both are on the court? Because you are going to need both of those two guys. As good as Derek Queen is, Julian Reese has been a proven excellent big in this conference, one of the toughest conferences for a big over the last 3 seasons. There's a lot more he has to give than what we saw last night. There's a lot more he can contribute than what we saw last night. So that's the thing that I'll be watching most closely over the next couple of games. And this is the tough thing with college basketball in November, because next up for Maryland is Canisius on Tuesday night, then Villanova Sunday on a neutral court. I believe that's in Newark, that game in the Prudential Center. Yeah, it is next weekend. So we probably won't learn a whole lot from Canisius, but we'll learn a little bit more against Villanova. A Villanova team that, by the way, has struggled to start the year. Villanova 2-3. I'll get much more into that game next week, but that will be the thing I continue to watch most closely going forward is what does Kevin Willard do with the minutes with Derek Queen and Julian Reese? How often does he play those guys together? Can he figure out lineups that work where, one of them are on the bench and the other's on the court? What are the optimal lineups when you want to get one of them out? What is the optimal lineup when they're both in? How do you configure an offense to utilize 2 extraordinarily skilled, extraordinarily productive big men? Those are the big questions that I'm asking myself. So I walk away from this game overall disappointed. I'm disappointed because it's a game that they led at halftime with a great environment, a great crowd, that they fought back really hard at the end too, and they couldn't get a win. They couldn't pull it out. They couldn't find ways to pull it out. But when I think about that game, look, if I tell you give up 48 second half points and you miss as many free throws as they did in the final 2 minutes of that game, 2.5 minutes of that game, you say no way you win that game. So I get it from that perspective. But then I go back again and I say, wow, Jacoby Gillespie looks like he could be a first or second team all Big Ten kind of guard. He puts up 24 points. Your freshman big man puts up 24 points. You're like, wow, I hate to waste that performance. So I'm disappointed that they didn't win that game. I understand the things, and I hope I was able to convey my understanding there, or my opinion on why they weren't able to win that game. But I don't view this as the season's over because they didn't win that game. It was a big chance to get a good resume win. There will be more. I mean, you just look around the Big Ten last night even. Wisconsin takes down Arizona. Purdue takes down Alabama. There will be resume building opportunities in the Big Ten, no doubt about that. So that is what it is. But it is a missed opportunity nonetheless. There will be more. I think this game was, if it serves as a learning experience for Maryland, it will be a very good thing. Because it's a game where they showed we can play with the best of the best in the Big East, which is great. I expect Marquette to be a top 25 team all year long. I expect Marquette to be in the tournament. I expect Marquette to challenge for a second weekend appearance in the tournament. And I hope that they can take those lessons out of this game and apply them moving forward and build on those going forward. Because I think it's very clear Maryland has some really good building blocks, a good nucleus to have a really good season. So while I am disappointed in the result, while I am disappointed in some of the things that we saw, while they could have won that game, I do take some solace in the fact that You had Derek Queen go for 24. You had Gillespie go for 24. Maryland turned the ball over 9 times in the first half of that game. Julian Reese didn't score, and they had a lead at halftime. Those are all encouraging things, and the beauty is we'll get to see how they grow and develop over the next few weeks. That's the show for today. I'll be back later next week to recap the Canisius game and look ahead to Villanova. You enjoy the games this weekend, and I will talk to you then.